the singular most important aspect of Nigeria's presence in a number of these African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries is the human element that we deploy to this nation. This is the outward expression of our foreign policy, the physical expression, the physical attestation to our foreign policy.
Xenophobic factor is one thing now, but now let's look at the principle of economic reciprocity. Is this well factored in this volunteer mission that's talking about the whole essence of the technical aid call for the Africa, Pacific, and the Caribbean?
Now, you probably will have looked at it this way. If there had not been this scheme, if Nigeria has not been well integrated into the culture, the system of those countries, of course, this factor of xenophobic factor that you identified would have been much more than what you have identified. In other words, this is in spite of the fact that Nigeria is active in those countries. There had been cross-cultural integration. We have been actively involved. But let us put it in this context. What are the factors leading to some of these series of attacks on Nigerians? We need to emphasize the fact that there are indeed good Nigerians. They are in abundance. But the few Nigerians that will not do the right things in the right way often provoke a number of these responses. For example, you discover that what happened in Guinea-Bissau was linked to an incident of kidnapping. Of course, you know that this is a major issue that has reared its ugly head that the federal government is trying to battle with in Nigeria.
Now, Dr. Pius Oshuyukomi, before I let you go in this edition of Network Africa, let's just quickly take an account of stewardship of your tenure when you were the special advisor to Mr. President on international relations. Permit me, I'll be rubbing it in here that you were the special advisor to the Mr. President on international relations. But during your tenure, you were hardly seen. Many will feel that government business is something that is strongly linked to visibility because you are holding a public office. Could you tell us why this was so?
Well, let me tell you this. I have had the privilege of being the Commissioner for Education in my state, Ondo State. And you will agree with me that I was visible in the media. But you must understand the context in which your appointment is made. And two, you must also understand the rules governing your appointment. Let me note, with all sense of responsibility, that foreign policy is indeed a very delicate enterprise. And there are quite a number of participants. In the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for example, when I was special advisor to the president, there were 3 ministers. In the villa, there are quite a number of experienced ambassadors and foreign policy practitioners who also contribute to the policy process. Now, it is such that as an advisor, even when the outcome of your suggestion is upheld by the president and it becomes a policy issue, you cannot actually lay claim to it because you would not know the totality of the pieces of advice that Mr. President will have gathered to be able to take that decision. Yes, the decision might reflect your contribution, but the processes leading to that outcome might not even agree with the logic through which you come up with that. Two, you must also understand the fact that advisors, by nature, should only be seen and not be heard. Your pieces of advice is to your principal, and you cannot claim patrimony over it. He's bound to take it, or he's bound not to take it. Now, when he takes it, he becomes the author. And as a political scientist, I know well enough that in the foreign policy circuit, you are only part of an entire huge process.
So now, does Mr. President come back to give you a pat on the back when your advice turns out to be a Midas touch?
Well, let me give it to Mr. President that apart from the fact that he has the father figure, you also find in him a friend, a brother, a mentor. He's always quick to acknowledge the slightest of your contribution, even though it's not central to the totality of decision that he would take. At every point in time, flying with him, sitting at the dinner table with him, and sitting at the strategy table with him, it gives you an impression that you have a lot to contribute and that what you have contributed in the past is appreciated. Now, that gives you that internal joy that, considering the fact that we have 170 million Nigerians, quite a number of people will give up their respective careers to be able to serve at this level. And so if you have the opportunity, and Mr. President occasionally looks at you and says, look, well done, you cannot but feel happy. And let me emphasize that Mr. President is fond of doing that always, acknowledging your little contribution and telling you that you can do more. And that is really the tonic.
Dr. Pius Oshinukom, it's been a pleasure having you in this edition of Network Africa, and also for bringing a lot of insights into the workings of Aso Rock, because I know that's where it's a privilege being in such an organization and also having an insight into the workings of government and at the highest level. Thank you very much for coming on this edition of Network Africa. Thank you very much indeed.
In Nigeria today, the terms of existence for us to continue as a nation has attracted deep concerns, as many Nigerians have pointed to national dialogue as the way forward. Now, initially, the controversy on this conference was whether it should be sovereign or not. However, the federal government, in response to these yearnings, inaugurated the Presidential Advisory Committee on National Dialogue. However, the sincerity of this agenda has been questioned mainly by the opposition party, who have raised some pertinent questions, which includes what happens to the outcome of the past confabs. Would it not clash with the constitutional provisions on the role of the National Assembly? And what will be the basis of representing the people at the National Conference? In our mission to set the record straight, Network Africa goes one-on-one with the Chairman, National Advisory Committee on National Dialogue, Senator Femi Okurumu.
So now let's just quickly go into the very burning issue, the issue of national dialogue. It's been called different cliche, from a national confab, a sovereign national conference, and all that. It's been an issue of controversy so far, and you've been appointed the Chairman, Presidential Advisory Committee on National Dialogue. Senator Femi Okurumu, could you just quickly tell us your terms of reference?
Well, our terms of reference consist in advising the President on a number of issues. One, what should constitute the agenda of the National Conference? Two, how large a conference, that is, what size of a conference will be optimum? What size should we have? Three, how should the delegates to this conference be chosen? 4, what should be the duration of the conference? 5, what should be the structure of the conference? 6, the legal framework for the conference. What should be the legal framework upon which the conference will stand? And 7, the legal framework for transmitting the findings and recommendations of the conference itself when the conference holds. By what legal framework do we actually convert these resolutions and decisions to become part of our constitution and laws?
Now, you've been going around the country, and that's one thing I really appreciate about the issue of the National Conference, realizing that it is for Nigerians. But what has been their response so far?
Everybody across the country, from north to south, east to west, Now that we are all resolved that we are going to participate